Hi everybody, I'm Jenny Salt. I'm the Deputy Chair of the Midlands Branch of the Pipeline Industries Guild. Thank you for joining us today. We've got two excellent speakers who will be providing you with an overview of how their companies are seeking to reduce carbon as part of their work. We've firstly got Adrian Shortland from Cadent, who will present first, followed by Ashley Carter from Advance Welding. We will have a short question and answer session followed after each presentation. And by all means, please use the chat function throughout the presentation to document your questions for the speakers, and we can ask them later. This webinar is going to explore the synergy between the needs and aspirations of companies, in this case Cadent, towards carbon reduction and net zero, and a manufacturer, in this case Advance Welding, who are designing and developing equipment to contribute to that goal. First up, we've got Adrian Shortland, who's the Interim Sustainability Manager at Cadent. Prior to this, Adrian worked as the Asset Investment Planning Manager as part of the Rio2 team to deliver on the price control plan for Cadent to Ofgem. Cadent look after 131,000 kilometres of pipeline and also almost 50% of Great Britain's gas customers, delivering services from 28 operating areas through 4 networks, each with their own geographical and social requirements. Today, Adrian's going to briefly run through sustainability plans for Rio2. Over to you, Adrian.
Okay, thanks. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yep.
Do you want to share your screen?
So, okay.
If you wanted to put your
And
video
everybody
on,
seeing that
do.
okay?
Yeah.
Everybody seeing that? Yeah, sorry, I didn't catch that. Yep.
Yes, yes.
Okay, super. Okay, so just sort of quickly give an introduction to this. Obviously, as an organisation, we recognise the impact that our business operation has on the environment, and through that we are putting some controls and plans in place to reduce that impact and move us towards net zero in a number of various areas. Obviously the sort of key areas that we I suppose suffer most and have the biggest impact is through our leakage of methane into the environment, and in terms of our carbon footprint, that is by far the largest component that we contribute towards that. But there are a number of issues that we're looking to address as part of that. We also have elements around our commercial vehicle fleet, emissions that result from works that we actually undertake, our own energy consumption, our staff business mileage, as well as sort of like where we use gas and energy in our own processes as well, such as preheating. So it is all about how we can deal with that. And then we also obviously recognise our impacts on the physical environment as well. So there are elements around what we send in terms of spoil to landfill, our sort of direct waste that we send to landfill, what we can do in terms of biodiversity at our sites, where we have our operating sites, but also where we actually undertake works as well. So how can we improve what we put back into the environment as well, to sort of add value to that, and then our sort of normal use of natural resources as well, things like water. So how can we address that and reduce our impact on that as well? So that, those are some of the key areas that we're actually looking at in relation to that, as well as how we transition ourselves as well for the future. So in terms of what we've done so far, quite a lot really. We've actually reached our 2020 greenhouse gas target ahead of schedule. So you can sort of see where we are on that graph in the top right-hand corner there. The blue line being our target, and the orange line our sort of actuals that we're reporting. And you know, we've made sort of strides ahead in terms of how we've addressed our carbon footprint in that area. We've also sort of reduced our leakage as well, that I spoke about earlier, and that's from a culmination of both our iron mains replacement program. So we're replacing the poor mains with new PE, but then we're also where we've got iron steel pipes, we're utilising MEG, and also looking at optimising pressure control as well, so that it reduces the opportunity for leakage in those areas as well. We've significantly reduced our waste to landfill from our depots and our head offices, from 60% in 2012-13 down to 4% for the last financial year. We like to sort of benchmark ourselves to sort of see where we are in terms of other companies, and we sort of benchmark ourselves on various sites, and one of the key ones that we use for environment, social and governance benchmarking is GRESB, and we've been doing that for about 3 years now. From the first year, we obviously improved from 66% to 75%, and we just recently submitted our return for this year on the portal, and so we're hopeful of reflecting the improvements that we've made in those areas. And it is a moving feast, that one as well, so it doesn't sort of stand still. It moves with your peer groups as well, so if they improve, the benchmark improves. So you can't just sit still and do the same thing each year. You need to demonstrate that improvement year on year, so that you keep making that improvement as well, and don't slip back. We've launched a biodiversity strategy, so we'll actually go out to our sites and carry out biodiversity audits at our sites, look at ways that we can improve those to sort of enhance the local environment, as well as attracting other forms of flora and fauna into the area that will help offset and also improve the area within which we operate. And coupled with that as well, we will also ensure that projects that we do look at elements in relation to how much carbon is associated with that, and how we can improve that as well with tree planting, so that we can get a real feel of what that improvement is in biodiversity that we're bringing. Some of the other things that we're doing, that we're looking to introduce, and certainly have introduced so far, are our zero emission vehicles. So we've begun to introduce those, and we have a program to deliver more over a period of time. We've also developed a science-based target for our future greenhouse gas reductions, and we're just awaiting sign off on that one from the science-based targets. We're a big supporter of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We've subscribed and achieved ISO 14001 for about 20 years now, and we were just recertified again earlier this year. And we partnered with the Sustainability School to actually educate our suppliers as well in relation to how they conduct themselves and processes and procedures that they have in place to ensure that they are sustainable and socially aware of how they conduct themselves. And a lot of our sort of future contracting work will take account of sustainability and social questionnaires within our tender evaluation as well. Just moving on to sort of like the transition piece as well in terms of what we've been working on. Obviously the key area for this is we recognise that fossil fuel gas is a limited use fuel going forward, and we need to look at how we best provide heat and cooking opportunities to customers across our networks as an alternative to electric moving forward. So one of the key things that we obviously look at is the use of hydrogen in the networks and how we repurpose our networks to actually deliver that. So there's a number of projects that are in place at the moment in the northwest and in the north of England, in conjunction with partners. So we're actively looking at the transition of the northwest network through the support of our REPEX program, replacing iron pipes with PE pipes to enable that transition to take place. But then also the work that we're looking to sort of do with Northern Gas Networks around hydrogen homes. So people may have seen in LinkedIn and various press releases last week, there were 2 hydrogen homes that were actually opened to sort of test this technology going forward. So this is things that would include elements around hydrogen boilers and sort of a real sort of step forward and to give the other options than purely an electric option. There's also elements that we've done in relation to transport pathways, particularly around sort of HGV transport. So we've got CNG refilling stations that we're working with companies like John Lewis with, and we're also actively promoting injection of biomethane into the network as well. So we added another one into the mix this year. So we're now operating 36 different sites that are injecting biomethane into our network as well. So I hope that gives a bit of a flavour about what we have done so far. There's more going on that we're sort of like working into Rio 2, and that's essentially sort of like contemplates on a lot of our sort of social, environmental, and transitional sort of moves as an organisation to look at the sort of the future of gas and how we can sort of move thinking and a credible offer in that space as well. So I suppose that as part of the Rio 2 plan, we submitted an environmental action plan that sort of split down about 30 actions that we were looking to do over 3 category areas. So there were sort of key areas around sort of decarbonising our business operations. So that really looks at, I think, continue to look at that shrinkage issue and actively look to reduce that further. And that also goes in hand in hand with ensuring that we deal with things like theft of gas more effectively as well. So you know, that sort of loss of gas from the network is reduced, but you know, in a much greater manner. We're also looking at how we can better utilize where we purchase our energy from, to ensure that it's 100% renewable across all of our sites. We then also look at sort of what we can do in relation to offsetting things. So a lot of our new depots and certainly our new head office building are built to BREEAM standards. And they're incorporating things like grey water harvesting, solar panels, to ensure that we are actually offsetting and making use of renewable energy through our normal business operation as well. We'll be looking to reduce any of our business mileage, and certainly something that, you know, I think a lot of people have learned over the COVID period is you don't need to drive hundreds of miles to sort of have active meetings. Inevitably, there will be those instances where site visits need to take place, but we are actively looking at how we can reduce our business mileage for ourselves moving forward, and that, you know, that will involve looking at new hybrid working options as well. So people won't be expected to come into the office as often as they used to do. There'll be more sort of satellite and home working as well, with maybe just like a day or two a week in the office for meetings and team works or site visits. So, you know, we're really looking to sort of like address those elements there as well. We're also keen to work with our contractors as well in relation to reduction of our scope 3 emissions, and how that can work going forward as well. In terms of the next stage, obviously we want to reduce our environmental impact. So there are key things around what we want to do in that space. So one of our sort of key actions is also, I suppose, a bit of a one of our key challenges as well, and that's around PE pipe, because, you know, there's a considerable amount of carbon in relation to the production of the PE pipe, but then it brings the benefits as a result of installing it. So one of the key things that we've now instigated is a reuse facility. So it enables us to bring back into a depot offcuts of different pieces of pipe that may previously would have been scrapped, and they're brought in and there's and logged back into a system, and it enables the depots and engineers to look at what is available on the shelf in this depot, and they can actually have bespoke sizes of leftover cuts of pipe, so that we're actually reusing elements that would have previously gone into waste. We're also sort of like looking at how we improve our spoil and reducing the use of virgin aggregate into our reinstatement works, so that we don't send as much spoil into landfill as we currently do. Again, we're looking at how we can work with our employees to reduce their environmental impact as well. So we're looking at sort of different sort of vehicle opportunities for company vehicles, but also opportunities for people to have EV and hybrid vehicles as part of the staff vehicle scheme as well. And we're working closely with sort of community around sort of biodiversity works, that we can sort of improve in those spaces as well. And water consumption is a key one for us to reduce as well. And certainly with the introduction of the grey water harvesting that I described earlier, and building on that more and looking at other opportunities in terms of where we can monitor water actively as it comes in, so that we can identify any leaks that may, we may be unaware of, that we can actually address earlier on, will all contribute towards the reduction in that usage. And then sort of the last element sort of we talk about is this transition piece. So this is sort of like how we can move ourselves from this sort of fossil fuel network into this new hydrogen network. So obviously part of that, we need to future-proof our network. So we're doing part of that now in conjunction with our REPEX works. So we're not only sort of making our network safer by replacing our iron and steel pipe work, we're also future-proofing it to enable this transition to a hydrogen green gas network. What we need to ensure as well as part of that is that we have proven technology that enables our customers to utilise that as well. So we need to sort of demonstrate that houses can function, they can be heated, people can cook, they can heat their water, etc., etc., in the same way as they would have done with a gas boiler, but obviously having a sort of a hydrogen boiler in the property. So these two new homes that have been established will really sort of test and prove that technology going forward for us, and give those sort of credible opportunities moving forward. We'll obviously continue to work closely in terms of what else we can do in terms of decarbonising heating and building up that evidence so that we can enable a wide choice of sort of decisions that the government can make in terms of the future heating of the country moving forward. There's also other elements as well around sort of our social impact as well, where we will look to sort of better decommission our sites. So obviously what we want to look at is what our options are in terms of where we no longer require a site, how we can return that to a sort of a better environment than maybe it was previously. So it wouldn't be necessarily a case of just mothballing the site and leaving it as it is. What can we do in terms of turning that back to sort of a greenfield site or something that's available for community use? So those are other options that we will look at as part of a decommission process moving forward as well. I think that probably brings me to the end of that presentation. So I thank you for listening. Is there any questions that people want to put to me now that I can try and answer for you? Or certainly if I don't know the answer, I can go away and bring it back.
Thank you, Adrian. We've had a few questions come through the chat function. So to start off, you mentioned that you're seeking to reduce carbon as part of your projects. And do you have any formal requirements for biodiversity net gain delivery as part of these? For example, a certain percentage that the project teams seek to achieve?
Yeah, if you can bear with me a second, I can probably just dig that out. He says, sorry, you put me on the spot now.
Can always come back to that question later if need be.
Yeah, let's come back to that.
Yeah, no problem. Second question, regarding the biodiversity audits, do the good practice principles form any part of the matrix used to consider the biodiversity impacts of development / sites?
Yeah, I mean, we are actually sort of following a set out criteria as part of those audits, and we have committed to report back on those as part of our environmental action plan, and indeed we'll be doing so as part of the requirements of the annual environmental report that Ofgem has specified as part of the price control.
Excellent. Next question, how do you view the timing to replace the pipelines in the transportation grid to transport 100% hydrogen for optimization of emission reductions?
Well, it certainly it's not all RIIO-2. We had sort of looked as part of the RIIO-2 to accelerate things for a lot of our sort of what we class the cost benefit pipes, our CBA pipes, which are essentially pipes that are in close proximity of other iron mains that we would be replacing, that sort of made sense to replace at the same time. But we didn't necessarily get the level of funding that we were hoping for that area. So we will obviously be continuing that process through RIIO-2 and into RIIO-3 as well. So it is a longer process, but it is one that we're committed to sort of achieving as quickly as we can.
Fab, thank you. And finally, unless there's any other questions pop up next, as you mentioned, you've benchmarked against other companies. Who's the best out there?
Well, I sort of misled you a little when I talk about benchmark, because we can't actually, although we benchmark, we're benchmarking against a cohort of companies, so we don't actually sort of see a league table as such of us against our others. We just sort of see a percentage wise across all of our peers as to sort of where we sit. But certainly, we look at other companies, and we aspire to sort of learn from what what they've already done. So there are companies like Shell that have they have a good sustainability reporting framework that we want to sort of try and aspire to going forward, so that we can enable our customers and our stakeholders to be able to look at how well we're doing, look at our progress in a sort of a real-time environment within our website. So if they're looking for something in particular, they can actually get directly to that and filter that data more directly, rather than having to trawl through a PDF document. So certainly, we're looking to make that experience better for people. But I'm confident in certainly in a lot of the initiatives that we're doing. We're doing the right thing. We've talked to our customers, we've talked to our stakeholders, we've talked to different groups, environmental groups and the like, to understand what the key important factors are. We've spoken to government about these things, and we've put those measures in place to move us towards achieving and supporting the targets that the government have set out. So, you know, I'm confident in terms of us doing the right thing. What I would like to sort of see is our message and our performance being easier and more accessible to people to see that as well.
Thank you. One final question before we move on is what have been some of the barriers when implementing your EAP, both internal and external barriers?
Well, I think, you know, some of the key things are, you know, it is around what we spoke about earlier. You know, there's funding limits in terms of how fast we want to move, resource limits in terms of how fast we want to move. You know, we could make that commitment to sort of want to deliver things faster, but we have to recognise that we don't have potentially the big, you know, a big enough resource in terms of a workforce to potentially deliver that without significant investment in training, development, and attraction of new staff to deliver that, as well as sort of the funding to actually do that work. There is also you know, other factors that we need to sort of consider around you know, EV vehicles, for example. Some of our areas are quite sparse in terms of the distance that people have to travel to actually get to sites, and it may not be effective with an EV vehicle in terms of the mileage that needs to be covered, or indeed the payload that they need to carry as well, because obviously you know, there's more space taken up with things like batteries in vehicles. So we have to sort of consider the payloads that we used to be able to carry in our vehicles compared to what we can carry now. So, you know, that has influenced how our sort of our workforce is deployed as well, and how we deploy our vehicles as well in relation to clean air zones in cities and the like, so that we can meet the requirements that are sort of set out there as well. So, you know, those are some of the sort of the key, I suppose, challenges that we face in that respect.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you very much for your time, Adrian. It's been a really, really insightful presentation.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
If you're able to stop sharing your screen, and
sure.
we'll pass over to Ashley. So Ashley Carter is the sales manager at Advance Welding. Advance Welding are the leading supplier of electrofusion welding equipment in the UK. They've been manufacturing equipment for over 16 years and have become the supplier of choice for all the utility rental companies and most of the major utility contractors in the UK. Over the last few years, Advanced Welding have noticed a shift towards more environmentally friendly equipment, so have started developing or have developed the battery-powered Fuse range. Today, Ashley will explain the benefits of the Fuse battery-powered electrofusion welding machine. Over to you, Ashley.
Thank you for your introduction. So, as Jenny said, I'm Ashley Carter and I'm the sales manager here at Advance Welding. I'm just going to share my screen now, if that's all right. We should all be able to see that. So, as a key supplier to the utilities industry, we're excited to show you how we are working with the gas networks to help them achieve net zero. Today we're going to be talking you through our groundbreaking new eFuse electrofusion welding unit. Our eFuse is the world's first battery-powered electrofusion welding machine designed to be used all day, every day. So let's start back at the beginning. When we began the design work, we decided to break down the environmental benefits we're looking to achieve into 3 bite-sized processes. The first one being travelling to the job. How can we positively impact on the CO2 created whilst travelling from site to site? The second one was carrying out the work. Once you've arrived at the job, how can we make the process as environmentally friendly as possible? The third and final process was the material used. What impact would we have with our latest innovation on the amount of material used to complete a connection? So if we take a look at the travelling part of the job, how can a welder reduce the emissions created by your vehicle? As I'm sure you know, the size of vehicle used by each gang is determined by the equipment that they need. Old-fashioned electrofusion requires a big heavy generator, which takes up a lot of space and also adds weight to your van. Whereas if you're using the battery technology of the e-fuse, a larger generator is not needed, meaning you can carry less weight and reduce the size of your van. So if we use an example of the Mercedes range of vans, simply swapping from a Sprinter van, which typically produces 222 grams per kilometre of CO2, to a Vito van, this brings your CO2 emissions down to 163 grams per kilometre. This change alone gives you a 26% reduction in CO2 emissions while travelling between sites. So already seeing the potential savings to be had getting to the job, what about while you're there completing the work? So based on the data we've collected, if you look at an average year of welding for one electrofusion machine, it typically gives you around 3,642 welds. So if you take this data and break it down into weld fitting types and seconds taken to weld, we end up with 3,560 minutes of actual welding time. So then if we take this actual time welding and transfer this into the time used to run your generator, we'll allow 30 seconds on either side of the weld, firstly to start your generator and allow it to settle, and then to stop it once the weld is complete. We end up with a total of 5,380 minutes of runtime over a 12-month usage. Now to put these numbers into a potential saving based on average fuel consumption and the average CO2 emissions of an average generator, this will give you 344 kilograms of CO2 produced. So then if we take the numbers from the previous slide and apply the same thinking to the e-fuse, the numbers start to look a lot better. The same 3,642 welds would be equal to 99,280 kilojoules of welding energy, which in terms of runtime works out at 29.2 kilowatt hours of energy. Again, based on the CO2 produced by average mains electricity, the e-fuse emissions are just 8 kilograms, which is a massive saving of 336 kilograms of CO2. And if you're using renewable energy, such as solar or wind, then this reduces your carbon footprint to 0. Now to put this into perspective, 336 kilograms of the same amount of CO2 created from the electricity used is the same amount of electricity used to power an average house in the UK for 4 months. So now that we've looked at travelling to the job and doing the work, how can we reduce the amount of material used during this process? We find that faulty or poorly maintained generators don't run correctly, and this can cause them to stall, drop or increase their output voltages. Now these type of faults account for over half of electrofusion failures. And when this happens, the fittings are required to be cut out and discarded. our data shows that over a 12-month period, around 1.5% of all of our 3,645 fittings welded have an installation fault and need to be replaced. Using the e-fuse doesn't require a generator, instantly removing over half of the faults seen. So by making a more reliable process, fewer fittings are needed and fewer fittings need to be replaced. This will give you a potential saving of over 55 fittings over your 12-month period. This not only saves money, but also saves on material waste. So finally, to summarise, our latest innovation doesn't just look at the physical act of welding. Due to its capacity, it actually gives you the opportunity to change the way you work. From the vehicle used to travel from job to job, to an environmentally friendly solution for welding, and finally, helping you save on waste materials. The e-fuse is much more than just an electrofusion welder. It's a different way of working, giving you a huge step towards achieving net zero. Thank you for listening. A little bit shorter than intended, but myself and Kevin will be happy to answer any questions you've got now.
Thank you, Ashley. So we've had one question posted. So with the evolution of battery power over recent years, and given that batteries are required to be recharged at some point, what's next or in the pipeline, so to?
So at the minute, we are currently working on a battery generator.
Instead of petrol.
Yeah, so instead of petrol generator, so you can obviously remove the petrol generator completely from a van kit. So you'll be able to power your pumps, lights, anything like that via the battery powered generator moving forward.
Excellent. Has anybody else got any questions they want to ask before we wrap things up? We've got one, another one come in. Does this battery system have a limit on pipe freezing size?
So the welder itself will weld up to 355. We designed it mainly for the installation of house connections. So it's obviously better at working at small sizes, so 32 mil, 63, 90. But yeah, it'll weld all the way up to 355.
Excellent. And final question, any thoughts on alternative bags / coverings for EF fittings? They are single-use plastics and difficult to recycle.
Unfortunately, that'd be more one for the fitting manufacturers. We just focus on the welders themselves, but definitely a conversation we can look at having.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ashley. So thank you both to both speakers today. Very insightful webinar. Thanks to everybody else that started in today. Just before you go, please check out our events page on the Pipeline Industries Guild website. We've got loads of upcoming events and you can register for those on there. As a summary, our next webinar is the Green Alliance event, which is a partnership between the Pipeline Industries Guild and the UK STT. These are a series of events which look to explore, share and promote the industry's drive towards net zero and reduction in environmental impact. Tomorrow's webinar will be joined by Mike Elmar of National Grid and Scott Stone of Volga Trenchless Solutions. We've then got on the 27th of July at 12 p.m. A 30-minute presentation by Red CCTV on the future of site security. And then on 29th of September in the evening, we've got our Northern Branch running a go-karting event at the Three Sisters Race Circuit in Wigan, which is a popular event, so make sure you get your place. On the 8th of March 2022, we've got our 64th Guild dinner at the Grosvenor House Hotel in London. For those that haven't been before, it's a fantastic event, so hope to see you all there. And then finally, if you're not already aware, we do have each month we have a photography competition. So if you've got any impressive photos of the work that you do or anything related to the utilities sector, feel free to send in your photo to membership@pipeguild.com and you'll be entered into the runnings for a £20 voucher, and each monthly winner also gets their entry displayed on the Guild homepage and then can go through to the final for a chance to win the Pig Annual Photography Competition trophy. So lots of events to look forward to. Hope to see a lot of you there in the future, but we'll end the webinar now. Thank you very much for your time.